Brett here. Welcome to Ep7 of the Paradox Diaries. Put that there, nice and loud. All right. So remember, bounce with me. The whole purpose of this is I'm just distracting myself and yourself, and also I'm practicing material. I'm trying to incorporate it into my brain. So actually adding kinesthetic movement along with practicing material is a great way for you to do that. And I'm going to do one change. I'm going to move this forward. There we go. That's better. All right. So let's get into a decent supportive stance. Feet parallel, knees slightly bent, hip width apart. You can go a little bit wider. That's fine. Don't worry too much about this. Really, what I want you to feel is almost no effort. So work your way around until you can find almost no effort and just lightly bounce. This is good right here. So I'm going to be here for a while. Um, let's see. Last night, my HRV when I went, I think I was like 39 at the start before I did my qigong, and then 50 something afterwards. Tonight it's starting at 54, so I don't expect much change in my HRV before I go to bed. I mean, if it goes up, great. So tonight for observer. In this case, I'm the observer. Kind of obvious, right? But I want to talk about something that's been a multi-month experience. So I've been getting this image in my head, and I had finally kind of envisioned it, and I mean it's kind of reminds me of some comedy or some sketches from other things I've seen. So my brain was sort of putting together this idea, and I finally put it together. And in fact, I managed to create effectively a mandala or mandala. I'll put this up there. Let's see. Actually, it might be easier if I do this. And of course, by the way, this is insane, but let me talk through it. All right. So in the middle, you've got two people. I'm going to talk through this a little bit. So Virginia Satir was a therapist who did systems thinking. So she applied systems thinking to family therapy. That was her thing. And if you've ever heard of neurolinguistic programming, a lot of her work was used as a basis for that. Don't blame her on that. She just had this. She just did what she did. And if you ever heard of Tony Robbins, his stuff is based on NLP. So there's some stuff going on here. And really, what she observed was, at a minimum, interactions have four parts. All right, and that's what these people have. I've got it abbreviated for intake, meaning, significance, response. Now, there's more steps in there because you might be adding, if you will, emotional context. But for right now, that's sufficient. There's those four steps. So intake, meaning, significant, response. So I've mentioned this a couple times. The idea here is I'm saying something, you're hearing words. So you're hearing these words come into you. Now, there's a lot of steps between that, but let's just say you hear something. You're trying to understand what I'm saying. And then, do you have a response? Like, is there anything worth mentioning? And if so, you give a response. So when I give a response, when you give a response to me, then it comes back to me. And so again, intake comes in, meaning significant response, and then it goes back into intake, meaning significant response. Do you happen to notice that that's a infinity symbol, or there's yin yang right there? Just observation one, level one. Okay, that was level one of the model. So essentially, that is not the thing I saw, but the thing I saw was getting towards a yin yang, and the ends were sort of like speakers sending out signals in a yin yang. So it was same basic idea. Now, around that is a huge circle. And what we've got here is observation in the middle, context, context observation. And this actually made sense at one point. I think I'm going to stop on that. Let me ruminate on that. So on this diagram, oh yeah, got it. I got it. Okay, that's right. So the circle around the outside is kind of like here. It's kind of like this. It's giving stability. Okay, and along the axes are three pairs: self, other context, So self on the top, other on the bottom, context in the middle. That's from Virginia Satir. That's her version of the triad. And the idea is for any kind of congruent communication or situation, you need to consider yourself, others, in the context. And if any of those are out of whack, then you're not having congruent communication. That's at its essence is what she's saying. And so that's what one access is: self, other, context, and then self, other, context. But also for me, I've been using observer, observed, observation. So I'm the observer, top of the circle, observed, bottom of the circle, observations in the middle, and then same thing across the side. And there's some interesting things here. If we talk about triads, so triads, that's three options. To represent three in binary, you need 2 bits, and that actually allows you for 4 different values. So 0001, 1011, or if you use gray coding, so you only change 1 bit at a time, 00011110, right? And just happens that that kind of encoding, as you scale it up, is one way you can do minimal Boolean compression. You can basically minimize Boolean logic into either sums of products or products of sums, if I recall. I think that's it. It's related to K-maps as well. Okay, so anyway, if you notice, she has 4 steps, and I've kind of lost my train of thought on that, so I'm going to move on. I will bring it back, though. This idea of self, other, context, or observer, observer, observation, that 3 parts, it's actually a good way to look at situations, at something you're reading, trying to break things down. Because ultimately, if you can get that triad, you can understand something. And if you can't get that triad, then what that tells you is something is either missing because someone's trying to manipulate the situation, or maybe you're not considering things. If you're not looking at a situation, or let's say this, Jerry Weinberg was big on 3s, so he had the rule of 3. The rule of 3, the original one that I remember is, and it was in, I think it was in All Your Lights On. Yeah, might have been. I think it was All Your Lights On. Anyway, I'm digressing as always. It was you. If you don't have at least 3 issues with your understanding of the problem, you don't understand the problem. All right, and that is, look, you're never going to understand the problem fully. So be aware of the things you're not aware of, or try to be. So that is always be assured that there's more to know, and it might be that the more to know is not going to make a change significantly, but be aware. But also, in any kind of communication, find all 3 parts. And if one of those parts is left out, something's short. Like, for example, best practices. Okay, best practices compared to what? And that's the thing. So when someone says best practices, what they're really saying is, this is just how we do it. That's respectfully, that's bullshit. So there are no best practices. Now, you could say that there are best practices in a lot of situations. I'm totally on board with that, absolutely. But if you've listened to any of the Paradox Diaries, you'll notice best is empty. I mean, everything is empty. The problem with best is, and I've always had this issue with best, there are some things there's a couple things where I can say, yeah, this is my favorite thing. But for the most part, it really depends on the situation. So for me, best is always relative, like, hey, what's the best for the moment, or maybe for the next few weeks, or something like that. It's not like for all time. Best is a moving target. Depends on context. And if you ignore context, then you're at a dyad. There's 2, and you're going to find that there's not a lot of stability in a dyad. There's not a lot of feedback. You need feedback. You need codependence. And so another place where this happens is when you're trying to work on configuring some kind of work stream where you have, say, prioritized batches. There has to be a cost to the person making a request. If there's not any negative feedback, then someone's always going to say, hey, I want the high quality stuff. So there needs to be some kind of net negative feedback. So for example, if you do a high priority job now, you can't do a high priority job for 2 days or something like that. I mean, the point is you have a limit so that there's some feedback to make it so that the cost is worth the cost that you're willing to pay is worth the cost to the rest of the system for allowing for priority stuff to get through the system. So notice feedback right there, triad. I have something I need to get done fast. I'm willing to pay the cost, so it goes on the queue. If I can just do it when I yell, the squeaky hinge gets the oil, your system's going to crash. It's just going to have negative feedback or positive feedback. It's going to basically collapse in on itself. And if you want to sort of think about that or look into that, if you look into, I think, Quality Software Management by Gerald Weinberg, I'm going to say one or two. I don't remember which book. There's four of them. Or at least there were four when I read them. He talks about diagram of effects, and the idea is you just show effects from point A to point B. You show the feedback on things, and then when you find that you have a feedback loop, if you simply put some kind of gate or increase or decrease capacity or just turn off that feedback loop, you can easily make huge system changes just by one, being aware of the system, and then two, making a change to the structure of the system, which means you are self-aware of the system in such a way that you can modify the system so that the overall system is better. So in that triad, it's very much like the system is the implicit part of the brain. You are the explicit. You are trying to understand what's going on in the implicit. The implicit is trying to show you what it's doing. And when you finally figure out that connection, you can change something in the system, change a feedback loop, and all of a sudden shorten things up and collapse. And if you don't think the brain and that are the same thing, well, respectfully, I think they are. But, it's all empty. So the real question is, when you're working with a model, does that model somehow help you in a situation? And I'll give you an example of the triad: observer, observed, observation. And I've already done this one, but I'm not going to do it again. But if you're looking at a Zen koan, most of them can be emptied with emptiness, or answered with emptiness. It's lazy, but you can do that. But the other thing is just look for the triad, identify the triad. And what you're going to find is anything that is a question has an observer, an observation, and an observed. So figure out all three parts and you'll find out what's looking for. Now, what's going on? You'll figure out how to answer it, most of them. The other ones are emptiness. But you can use emptiness, or you can use recursive argument to maybe be a little more sophisticated than that. But at the end of the day, that's really all they are. All right, now, I've been shaking for 13 minutes. I'm going to do a little bit of stretching. Last night, I really opened up my shoulders, my chest. So tonight, I'm going to go ahead and work on the hips. Hips are generally really tight. Now, for me, I used to be able to do quite a bit of quite wide with my pancake or kind of side splits, but I sat in airplanes for a long time, and when I sat in airplanes, I would sit like this with my hips tight, and so my hamstrings were tight and my hips were tight, and I lost all that flexibility. I've gotten most of it back. It's taken years, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and do. Okay, if you want hips, this is the one pose. If you have to pick one pose, so there's this one and one more, but this is the one. And this is going to be a wonderful pose that also will build strength. All right, so I want to talk through it a little bit. The back leg is going to be pointing back, and the knee is going to be on the ground. And also the foot, generally speaking, is going to be pointing, plantar flexion. Just for definition, pointing, plantar, coming back, dorsy. So dorsiflexion, plantar flexion. All right. Now that's going to be important because if you're worried about your balance, this is going to get dorsiflexion, but this is going to get plantar flexion. Toes under, sit back. All right, so just FYI, if you're doing a lot of this If you want to get full range of motion on your ankles, do this, which then will allow you to do this. So that's why you care about your ankles. And also, if you do that stretch, you're turning your toes under. That's going to give you really flexible toes. And believe it or not, yes, you can actually make a huge difference gripping with your toes when you're trying to root to the ground and engage your ligaments so that you fully engage your body, your core, and so on. And you can do it. I mean, it took me over a decade to figure out how to do it, but you can do it. Okay, so now I'm going to start in the tabletop. I'm going to swing. Hello. Could you please? Here, come over here. There. I'm gonna have my back leg knee on the pad. I'm gonna swing my right foot forward. Here, I'm gonna get positioned, and you can come here, okay? And then I'm gonna set a 5-minute timer. Now, that front foot I've rotated out. I've got it a little bit forward. Honestly, if you want to and you're able to, you can turn this into a front split. But I'm going to do this more as a more of a deep lunge. Okay, now you can elevate, and then this puts more weight straight down. In fact, that's how I'm going to start. You can also recline. And if you need to, use whatever you need because the stretch is on the legs and the hip flexors, not on the arm. But as you practice this, you're going to build strength up. And so this is a really good way to slowly over time get really good muscle definition. So I have to imagine, since this is working on a lot of the fine muscles, that it's going to have an effect on your HRV. And the only reason I say that is HRV, as HRV gets better, heart rate variability gets better, it suggests or has a strong correlation with better skeletal, muscular, vascular system health. Actually, more than that. And I think you'll also find that while it's not proven yet, my personal experience suggests that when you do parasympathetic work, this is parasympathetic work, you're working with your vagus nerve. And when you do that, you're going to also increase your HRV. And increasing your HRV is shown to reduce resistance. It's connected with a switch in the phenotype of your astrocytic cells, possibly, so that they tend to go from consumption to conserve mode, which means they can store energy as potential energy later for better brain functioning, which means qigong literally stores energy, bioelectric energy. Probably, I believe that it does, but there's a lot of medical evidence to support it, and also I don't need medical evidence because, unbeknownst to me, when I started shaking, the jump up and down jumping, 2 weeks later, all of a sudden, I just noticed that I was sleeping better, et cetera, et cetera. So I actually don't care what the biomechanics are, even though I think I know what the biomechanics are, because my body's like, keep doing this stuff, buddy. And so I'm going to keep doing this stuff. The deep stretching allows a couple of things. One, sitting in discomfort allows you to practice and build mental stamina. Two, when you shake or bounce, the looser you are, the more randomization you're going to get, the deeper it's going to get. So this really complements shaking. It's also parasympathetic dominant. And so it really is a nice complement. And I find that when I combine this and bouncing or shaking, deep stretching, not this specific pose, but this deep stretching, that my heart rate variability jumps quite a bit high. It quite jumps higher than without. But I don't think it's going to jump when I'm already at 55 to start. Oh, that's a little too much. Oh, ouch, 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 ouch. Too much on the outside of my right leg there. I'm going to adjust. I'm moving way too fast and too much. Kitty, you're going to have to stop for a second. I'm sorry, buddy. Just stop. Okay? Thank you. I'll come back to you, I promise. There we go. I was moving too much and I had a little bit of a spasm on the outside of my right leg. So that's fine, didn't do anything, but I was just messing around too much. Okay, I'm holding my right arm just to have a little bit of weight so that I'm sort of more normally twisting my torso flat. I could also do something where I'm using both my hands to sort of try to get a little more of a straight perspective or straight body. And that's just because I'm playing around. When I do this, I'm getting a bigger stretch in my hip flexor. I'm still getting a big stretch in my hamstring. My abductors on the outside are getting some stretch. Certainly my adductors on the inside. Okay. Okay, I'm being overly cautious right now in terms of keeping my weight from shifting much. I'm doing empty movement. So what I mean by that is I'm balancing on one arm while I go to the other arm so that I can very slowly come up because I really, at the end, especially, that was a huge stretch even though I was talking. And yikes. Wow. I'm fine, but I'm just going to be really cautious. Okay, step one, do that. Okay, and that's fine. That's all it takes. Just have to get back to a sort of a reset of the body position. Okay, now, other side. This pose is asymmetrical, right, left, which means if one side is tighter than the other, you can do it longer. But when you're doing asymmetrical work, don't skip one side. And it's just that it's really do one side longer, absolutely. Maybe you do one side for 2 minutes, the other side for 5 minutes. That's fine if you're really that off. If you're doing some kind of say a racket sport or something where you're doing I don't need this at all, where you're doing a lot of asymmetrical arm movements, for example, or golf. But otherwise, do both sides because your goal is over time balance, and the way to balance is not through imbalance, not through complete imbalance, that is, avoiding one side. Now, I'm holding my arms, I'm locking my elbows. So I'm balancing on my elbows. You get good at this after a while. It really builds up the small muscles. So this is really, really good for you long term, especially as you age. I love this. I really love this, all these side benefits of the deep flexibility work. Now, I'm using my knuckles. I'm only using two knuckles on my hands. I'm using the pointer finger and the social finger. So I'm using these two fingers only. Some martial arts use a third finger, three knuckles for punching. Anatomically, for what we're doing, we're not doing that. You can do whatever you want. I'm going to use two knuckles. Your results may vary, some assembly required, but I can, for example, I'm not, that's a little awkward, but I can hold myself for a while like this, and I've got bone support in the hand to do that. Another little trick. Now, right now, my right hand is currently rotated to the outside or laterally rotated. I could, for example, I'm going to do an empty movement here. I'm going to take my left hand and I'm going to set my left hand down, lock it out. So now all my weight effectively can move over to my left hand. Then I'm going to move my right hand intermedially. I got to be careful about my wrist, but if I do that, now I've got this ligament engaged and I can really hang out here for a while. So I'm hanging out mostly on the ligament. I mean, I'm using some strength here, but not really very much. So that's how you can trick yourself into staying here longer. And you can find out lots of ways, lots of little tricks to make your body just a little bit better every day. And honestly, if you can accept a little bit, just the smallest amount on a regular basis, if you can learn to quiet the mind to accept a little bit, the value of that is perpetual motion. And perpetual motion gives you potential for lots of new experiences that allow your brain to sort of latch onto things and help guide you. And I mean that in an actual sense. I've been making lots of observations about how my body has been aware of stuff long before I connected it to other things in terms of pattern recognition and such. And so my personal experience is your body knows before, and let's say your explicit system in your body knows before your implicit does. And that happens at an immediate scale. Your implicit system is preloading your prefrontal cortex with images it expects you to see shortly. And also longer term, and also puts suggestions into your awareness to sort of coax you in a direction. And that direction might be it's looking for more stimulation or it's looking for less. So if you, just like if you eat a lot of sugar, you're training your butt guy, your your gut biome. Oh, I said that wrong. A lot of sugar, gut biome, you're going to want more sugar. If you start eating green food, after you get past the gas phase, your gut biome will change and you'll be less drawn to sugar. That's just basic science. You can look that up. I mean, as above, so below. The brain has the same thing. If you obsess on things, it's going to look for more things to obsess on. So if you watch a lot of news, it's going to just watch more news and get all outraged and such. So, you know, when you hear someone say woo woo, your intention follows your energy. It's literally the case because you're, oh, woo, that's good too. Ay, ay, ay. You're always wearing, just like I said, I think yesterday or the day before, when you're training a dog, you're always training them and they're always training you. It's always a bidirectional relationship. Same thing with your brain, your explicit and your implicit system. Okay, so now I'm going to show you the next pose. That is, if you're going to do one more pose, this really will give you a good overall mix. And then I'm going to tell you don't do it now. I'm going to do something else, but I'm going to do that when I go to bed. So this is the next pose is use some pillows, maybe even a little more than this. Actually, I'm sorry. If you're doing this in bed, okay, if you're doing this in a seated position, use some pillows, feet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 4, 5, whatever, and then just lean forward and just sort of hang out here for a second. This is going to really, right now, after doing that pose, this is really getting my abductors, AB on the outside. The adductors add to the middle. The abductors go out. Now, just lie in bed to do this. So same thing, except I'll go to bed and I'll have the comforter on my legs and I'll just sort of sit here like this. In fact, this is, if you want a term, this is supine butterfly. That's what this is called. But you know what it also is? It's really relaxing. And I'll tell you what, my hips are really tight right here. I'm going to hang out here for just a second. Oh, you didn't hear that. That was a nice pop. So my hips are tight, but they're loosening up nicely. So this is a really nice pose. It really opens up the groin. There are a lot of other things you can do with the hips, but these two poses are sort of your bread and butter. If you stick with these for a long time, months, you'll get a lot out of them. And when I say stick with it, if you can do roughly 15 minutes a night, 5 days a week, you will probably get amazing results pretty quickly. I mean, my experience was you might take a while to get to that 5 minute mark. Okay, I will say this. I'm going to go ahead and get out of this pose for the moment, but notice without even saying it, I naturally am going to put my hands on the outside of my legs and bring my legs together. And now I wasn't in it long enough so I can use my muscles, but if you're in that pose for a good amount of time, you can either do that or just slide your feet forward depending on how your body moves. Again, this thing is stimulating my vagus nerve. All right, back to shaking because I want to finish on shaking. But that right there was a sufficient 15 minutes. 3 poses, or 2 poses, one way symmetrical, one not asymmetrical. That first one, if you want to name, is called blaster. The second one, butterfly. And then seated butterfly, supine butterfly. You can also go on your stomach if you want to. But careful of that with how you have your knees. If you're going to do that, I have a 4-inch futon that I'll sometimes use for something like that, but I don't particularly like that. It's just hard. It can be hard on the knees for me. That's just it. There's lots of things you can try, but you don't know what's going to work until you try. And you might find that something doesn't work for you now, and then later it does. So you just got to keep trying to find things that work. And along those lines, I'm going to go ahead and do my isometrics with my neck because I like that. All right. So feet parallel, knees bent. I'm actually actively pushing my sacrum down, pushing my fontanella up, shoulders down as I push my right hand into my head, and relaxing now as much as I can my left side. And if you do this after your stretches, you'll see that you can probably get more of your core engaged from that stretch, especially this stuff I did last night. But tonight, this is still pretty good. And relax. And left side, same thing. Feet parallel, knees bent. Sacrum down, pushing. I'm actually not relaxing, I'm pushing it. I'm actively opening my hip flexors. I'm trying to externally rotate my thighs. I'm pushing my fontanelle up, shoulders down, hand into head, relaxing the right side, or trying to anyway. Okay. Front, same thing. Feet parallel, knees bent. Now, really pay attention to your cervical spine here. Your thoracic, but I'm more concerned about cervical. So I'm pushing up my fontanelle. I'm still doing everything, feet, knees. Just feel and make sure that you're feeling the pressure in muscles and not in joints, not in your spine. If you are, pull back. Don't do that. Okay, so for example, on that one, I was feeling that all the way to my floating ribs. Okay, now the back. The back is my second favorite. Now on the back, again, same thing with the whole body, but you want to be above the atlas. So there's that sort of that the top, about the middle of the back of the head, and I've got my hands interlaced, and I'm pushing my head into my hands, shoulders down, fontanelle up. That's really getting the front of my. I'm getting all the way to my transverse abdominals there. Whew. Doesn't look like I'm doing much, but there's a lot going on up here. And again, I'm not going to get a 6-pack. I don't care. But you know what I am going to have? I'm going to have better muscles than not doing it. And so as I get older, my body's going to be healthier. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for vitality. Um, it's not that I don't want to look good, but I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't do anything for me whatsoever. Okay, here we go. Okay, I was feeling a bit of a hot spot there. About, I'm going to guess C2. So I adjusted, now it's gone. I, I was doing a little more aggressively there, closer to a middle level PNF or proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. Isometrics are that. When you hold one side, it's going to tighten the opposite side. And when you let go, the rebound tends to soften it. And that works with the thing called the Golgi tendon organ, I believe, which is, it doesn't matter. It's a lot of details, but that's that technique. And I did a little bit more, get a bit more of a release. But since I just compressed my spine even more aggressively, I'm going to go ahead and do a forward fold just to allow it to relax a little bit. Bend your knees fine, doesn't matter. This is just trying to get your spine to relax. If you have a inversion table or some kind of yoga trapeze, even better. Oh. Now that was just a relax. I wasn't actually trying to get a full stretch there. Okay. So, observation. We did observer. We did observe. I'm not sure what we did for observe, but let's say this is observation. Observation. This part of the floor is squeaky as heck. I need to move to a different location in the office. Yeah, that's good. That's better. It's a little off center, but so am I. Uh, Last thing I want to talk about is change. How to introduce change into your system. And I'm going to talk about some models that are these are not my models, but these are things that have worked for me. These are things I've learned from various places. And I don't necessarily I remember the sources of some of them. So I'll just say this first one is is the first one that I learned from Jerry Weinberg. And the first rule of change is you don't change anything initially. Maybe you just observe, and then once you observe, then you add something, and then maybe the act of adding something is going to do something else. That's the thing. So if you want to sort of start gently, don't just go out and change a habit. Add something else. So as a recent example of that, I just randomly, for some reason, got a bug up my butt. I was just not feeling so great, and I was like, when the last time I felt great was, oh yes, I remember I was doing, yeah, and I remember that I was making these salad smoothies, and I really mean that. So they're disgusting. But the thing is, they're full of, I mean, they're effectively raw and vegan with all the contents. But I had one day one, and by that night, I could already tell that my sugar cravings were not as bad. So, for example, the night before, when I went into the pantry, it was a handful of little chocolate bars. The first night after the smoothie, it was two. The next night after the smoothies, looking at them somewhat longingly, but not so much. And by the third night, it was meh. And so I do one of those a day. That's generally my first meal, and really I watered them way down. And as a result, I'm getting really a whole bunch of really good nutrients. And specifically, all the greens that I'm putting in it are really good for helping neutralize the blood. Now, what I mean by that is, yeah, when you eat a lot of processed food, it tends to, as a side effect, cause your body to need to create more red blood cells, which sounds like a good idea, except it reduces the efficiency of your oxygen. And so, by having leafy green vegetables, it really can help. Basically, it thins your blood back to a better baseline, and it makes things flow better. And so, it reduces inflammation. It helps with everything. Helps with your parasympathetic system. And so, add one thing and try to interrupt something else. Now that's a big deal. I do not recommend you go in, because when I say, okay, I soak chia seeds and 4 or 5 other seeds for overnight or 2 days or 3 days, and then sprouts. I grow sprouts, and then I mix those in with frozen vegetables, frozen fruit, olive oil, sometimes coconut oil, whey powder, spinach leaves, arugula, freshly squeezed lemon. Did I already say olive oil? Sometimes salt and pepper, and I blend the heck out of it. And it's exceptionally good for you. And if you water it down, it's not so bad. But the thing is, I'm doing that because it really actually does help. I mean, quite a bit. It's helped my alertness. It's helped my sugar cravings. And I'll say one last thing. I'll do a little bit of. Oh, I'm really tingling all over from all that bouncing. Just do some light spinal twists. Another accident. So since I started soaking all my seeds together, originally I was doing I went through a bunch of variations, but ultimately I just put everything together, including I stopped using tahini and I'm using sesame. I'm just using unhusked sesame seeds, and I'm soaking those along with everything else, which is, I mean, I'm adding lemon, tahini, and olive oil. If I add chickpeas, I've got effectively a salad hummus. But anyway, in the water, for a while I started saying, "Oh yeah, I remember if you want to do something like make almond flour, you soak the almonds and then you keep dumping out the water because the tannins are anti-nutrients, blah blah blah, and they're bitter." But I hadn't been doing that, and then I started doing it because I changed something, and I noticed that actually, I think for me, and this is something you've got to experiment with, tannins don't agree with you, may not agree with you. They seem to agree with me. And specifically, it's a couple days after it took me a while to figure it out, but then I realized, the tannins were helping with my sugar cravings. And they do help, they can help with, for some people, they can help with blood glucose levels, insulin, I think. I don't remember, but tannins can be good, but they can also be anti-nutrients. That's the problem. Our bodies are pretty much in some sense all the same, but there's so much difference in terms of what you've been eating and so on. You just have to find out what works for you. And a lot of times, like when I was really unhealthy, um, the first thing I did was I did a disgusting, dirty keto diet, and I lost a lot of weight. And then all of a sudden, once I hadn't lost enough weight, that gave me enough space to actually start doing something. Right. So start small, make small changes. The whole keto thing started the same summer that Madonna's Ray of Light album came out. That's a different story. Okay, well, anyway, I think that's enough for tonight. I'm going to measure my HRV, and then I'm going to do supine butterfly as I go to sleep. And good night from the Paradox Diaries. I think Ep7, probably so. But numbers just a pointer.